There's never been any doubt that indie games are the creative undercurrent of the game industry, but 2025 is yet another spike in quality that closed the gap on AAA games, proving once again that if you're not playing indie, you're missing out on a big part of modern gaming. Whittling down this list to 15 was difficult as is, so keep in mind we're favoring full releases over early access and keeping the order alphabetical for the very best indie games of 2025. Don't call it a comeback, 11-bit Studios has returned to the top of the critical charts, and if you only know them for the fantastic Frostpunk 2 surprise console owners, that was actually from last year. Yeah, they've already moved on to 2025's new strategy game with one heck of a story, The Altars. Back-to-back projects so thoughtfully and completely put together, it makes us question if the team somehow cloned themselves. Well, multiplicity is the name of the game here, with our protagonist Jan and our ensemble cast Jan. Look, the planet is in a bad state, and if clones can help us sort it out, so be it. But this unleashes some rather complex philosophical conundrums, like a good sci-fi story should. If your crew is just an extension of you, where do consequences end? Ball X Pit is a throwback to a different era of game design. Let's say the early 1990s, where multiple playstyles had been mastered but were ultimately abandoned as the arcade lost the spotlight to home consoles with longer, more complex single players. Or in the case of Ball X Pit, a mashup of very simple gameplay with a larger series of systems at work which can be explored between sessions. If you're a fan of Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak's classic Breakout, you'll find a lot to like here, but don't expect Ball X Pit to overwhelm you early on. Just roll into the meta play, give yourself advantages and better rollouts, and before you know it, the hooks are firmly in place. Skeptical? Well, give it a try yourself. Just forget about your morning plans, as this one will have you going for one more turn well into the night. Blueprints is a testament to indie games, as this pace and general tone are the antithesis of what big-budget games are supposed to be. Forget about being slowly told what to do, you'll be wandering around without any clear objective before failing out. How in the heck is that supposed to keep players engaged? Well, it's the look, the feel, the clear obstacles, even if you aren't given direction. It's often been said that puzzle games aren't so much about being smart as they are about making the player feel smart, and if that's the metric, Blueprints is a must-play. You'll be dropped into puzzle after puzzle that makes absolutely no sense whatsoever, only to overcome them and walk right into yet another intangible problem, and you're out. How does Blueprints keep players engaged? That might be the best puzzle of all. Clearly there's been some sort of mistake, because Claire Obscure Expedition 33 couldn't possibly be from indie studio Sandfall Interactive. But it's true. Yes, some aspects were outsourced and their work was eventually funded by a publisher, but when we're splitting hairs like that, it's pretty clear the reason is because the results blew everyone's expectations away. For an indie game, for an RPG, heck, for video games in general, the writing feels like the actual gameplay is impacting the moment-to-moment character interactions, and that makes their reactions to the current events absolutely infectious, like a good RPG should. The graphics, the story, the soundtrack, the more reactive combat, every aspect delivers so well and without compromise it easily stacks up to other modern major AAA role-playing franchises of this generation. If not, it surpasses them. The biggest case against Ender Magnolia Bloom in the Mist is time. This game launched all the way back in January, and yet its undeniable quality left an impression strong enough for the next 11 months. It's a Metroidvania, a genre that has seen a fairly consistent number of good new games whose worst offense is perhaps being a bit too familiar to the overall formula. If you know that feeling, then Ender Magnolia is a must-play. First of all, the magic systems trap systems on systems, mechanics on mechanics, creating a bridge between what's an attack and what's a movement feature, and a story that provides a surprising amount of cutscenes about clashing life forms, humans and the newly formed intelligent beings following the end of the world. You'd think everyone could put aside their differences after that, but, you know. All hail the king, one of the most prolific and successful developers from the initial indie boom. Supergiant Games stepped up to the next level with Hades in 2020. Well, after 4 long years and another year in early access, Hades has finally dropped its 1.0 this fall. This continues the lore of the first game, itself an adaptation of Greek mythology with all the presentational elements like expressive voice acting, a brooding rock soundtrack, and that signature art style. But if you showed up just for the gameplay certainly showed up too. If you missed the first game, this is an isometric action roguelike, and this time out the combat and movement is even faster and flashier than before, creating a dynamic mix of technical play and satisfying victories, especially because you'll be trying over and over and over again, mastering the new magic system. Who's up for Hades 3? Hollow Knight Silksong is a game that exists. You can play it right now on multiple platforms. Sorry if you haven't been keeping up with the long multi-year development, it just feels totally surreal to say Silksong actually came out. So how was the final result? Well, it appears everyone was so fond of Silksong releasing they forgot about what sort of game they were getting into. Silksong has no patience for sloppy play, and really considering its roots in the original game, we all had long enough to practice. Not only is the game faster, it gives away a few of the old tricks, allowing players to heal while moving. A change that fundamentally gives a totally different feel to the boss battles, but don't you worry hardcore players, Team Cherry added it deliberately because these guys are even harder. Of course. Keep Driving is a game that understands the core of nostalgia doesn't come from brands or lore, but familiarity and desire. You are a person old enough to get a driver's license, yet young enough to drop everything and go on a cross-country road trip. And like a classic formative journey, you really don't know what the heck you're doing. I mean, how could you when you're surrounded by several hundred miles of new terrain? Keep Driving gives players totally different outcomes based on their choices, but the moment-to-moment gameplay condenses the all-too-familiar experience of shifting landscapes and vehicles as you travel counties, cities, and states. But even if you've taken the trip in real life, Keep Driving captures that nostalgia when anything is an off-ramp away. Look Outside is such an effective game you might not want to play it at all, which is about as high of praise as you can give to a horror title. Pixel art and role-playing mechanics might appear to be a welcoming way to witness and interact with body horror, but oh no! Look Outside is absolutely no chill, and these familiar tropes are downright sinister in this Lovecraftian story. Every part of the apartment complex is housing some kind of life that was once human but absolutely is no longer human. In fact, the warping of reality has manifested beings that have never existed previously, and quite often they will manically attack you. Well, turnabout is fair play, so why does it feel so complicit? You can stop playing Look Outside anytime, but the unease will linger. If you check the social media of the developers behind Peak, you can watch in real time as they learn their silly little climbing game with goofball mechanics like Death and Ghost is going to be the biggest project they've ever worked on. What was meant to be a bit of fun but ultimately a light experience continued to be one of the best-selling games on Steam day after day, month after month. Even the developers were in disbelief to see their 1.0 follow multiple iterations to feed the growing player base. So what makes it so special? Well, it's kind of off in a good way. The climbing, the jumping, the maps that change, it all fits slightly together but trails into danger. In terms of game design, you could almost call it a comedy, leaving the entire chat rolling in a moment they can't even really describe. I guess you just had to be there. Let's be honest, pixel art, as deeply important as it is to graphics and design, has become a dead giveaway for indie games, giving the odd impression that's a lesser discipline. But then again, like Pipistrello and the cursed yo-yo drops, and everyone can witness the expressive potential of video games' first visual format. But utilizing the horsepower of modern platforms, it matches that expression in gameplay in the form of the yo-yo? Pipistrello has the gameplay to back its ideas, but it never lets up on the charm either, and much like Ball X Pit, this is adding on to concepts that can still go toe-to-toe with modern design. If you've got strong opinions about the Game Boy Advance, fast-track this one to the top of your list. Date-conscious viewers might remember The Root Trees Are Dead released a couple of years ago, but this year saw a new release on Steam offering enough changes to make it worth another playthrough for old fans, but new fans were hooked as well. But if it's new, why the heck does it look so dated? Well, The Root Trees Are Dead is doing a fairly sophisticated merger of nostalgia. We're talking a realistic case translated through the adventure mechanics of the 1990s. It's nowhere near as gruesome as the title would imply, but you will be stepping into a grisly murder. It's the execution that gives it an oddly sterile feeling that games of a certain era accidentally produced, except this time the ennui is no accident. Seemingly walking straight out of a comic book is the Seance of Blake Manor. How far would you go to save an innocent woman's life? Well, here's hoping you aren't too superstitious, because pretty much every single room will give off some seriously cryptic vibes. Well, surely these good people lurking about will be helpful? Actually no, not at all. In fact, you oftentimes walk away from conversations feeling more alone than before. The good news is the actual gameplay is fairly breezy, allowing players to get lost in all the nihilism in the face of Divinity vibes. And do expect to check check in with a long and surprisingly detailed stay with an intended playthrough closing in at nearly 20 hours. Wanderstop is the sort of game that feels cut right out of the collective video game culture. You are a storied fighter, but too bad because you can't do that anymore. Why not? Oh boy, that's a whole can of worms, so in the meantime, let's get a little mindful of where to decorate and garden. Wanderstop takes a lot of the themes we've all come to expect, but breaks them in new and meaningful ways. Because even in the objectively safe environment surrounded by good people, the internal trauma never really stops. Wanderstop is far from torturing its audience, but it's also not afraid to give a cozy game a less conventional hero who knows deep down they aren't a conventional hero. A game with as much to say as there is to do. Wheel World is just kinda perfect. You've got a familiar mechanic in bike riding with the whole world drenched in eye-catching cell shading and lavishly decorated with distinct environments. You can swap out your parts, save the world, and race against other bike riders. Oh, what was that? Saving the world? Of course! I mean, who else but a bike courier should handle the destination of eternal spirits? And failing to do so will in fact end the world. Yeah, but the important part is you get all these neat bikes that help you cut time and get ahead of the pack. And I suppose you could use it to help you resolve the great shift at a faster pace, ensuring the existence of all. Two equally important causes, I guess. Anyway, that's gonna do it for this video, but how about chat back in the comments about your favorite indie game of 2025? Heck, you can mention early access games if you like. Keep clicking around here at GameRant.com, and we'll see you in the next video. Thanks, everybody.